All right, Tyler, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Greg. How are you?
I am doing well. It's Thursday. It's been a busy week, so
No
we're just
kidding.
we're just riding high.
No kidding.
Today, we were kind of going back and forth, and we talked about going over the topic of coach and athlete relationships and kind of what that looks like, what that means. And I think we're both going to have some interesting perspectives on this. I think we're both player first coaches. I think we definitely take time to develop relationships, but just given that we're in different sectors and ages are different, maturity levels are different, I think we just have two different perspectives, even though we kind of come from the same place. So I'm pretty excited to dive into this with you. Um, I guess just kind of going right into it. First question: do you think that athletes have to like their coach to be coached well?
Whew. I think it definitely helps. I can see a lot more buy-in from my players whenever I take the time to pour into them. I've been the bad guy where it's shouting at them, trying to get them motivated that way. And some guys respond well to that, but definitely if you're working with female athletes, they tend to do much better if they like their coach. Going from previous strength and conditioning coaches they've had where they've told me they just couldn't connect with him, like they tried to joke with him and didn't work out that well. Like it was always serious, go 100%, compared to my coaching style where obviously we're going to get after it, but definitely mess around with them a little bit more, give them a little bit more personality in the weight room, if you will.
100%. I think there's two sides to it. I think, if you were to have a choice, I think the athletes should like their coach, no question about it. But to be coached well, I still think there is a level that I think different coaches can lean into different things. I don't think the coaches have to be quote unquote best friends with their athletes to be coached well, but um, there probably is a line, there is a balance to it where there doesn't have to be that kind of friendship level of relationships. I still think there is that coach athlete. One has an authority perspective or is an authoritative figure in this relationship, and so I think you can kind of wade through those dynamics pretty well. But kind of going maybe a little bit deeper, since you definitely liked those building those relationships. What does a great coach athlete relationship actually look like from your perspective?
I think you hit it a little bit where we're obviously professionals. Like we are not their friend. And sometimes that's hard for athletes to understand. Like I'm never in a million years going to go out and get dinner one-on-one with them. Whereas they might try and cross that line sometimes where they're like joking just a little too much, or they're trying to, like, hey, would you want to go play like sand volleyball or something with us? Stuff along those lines where like you have to find where that line is of I'm your coach. You can't just tell me everything about your entire life because sometimes I am a mandated reporter. Please know the line of where we're at. But at the same time, they know you're there for them, and they know how much you care. Whether that's going to their games, going to their practices, being around their team dinners, stuff like that. Like finding the line of where professionally I'm trying to pour as much into them without crossing that line, if that makes sense.
100%. It is a fine line, and I almost feel like being in the private sector, my line might be a little closer to a friendship than maybe yours might be. I know for me, I've taken a lot of or a handful of our athletes out to dinner to catch up on things. I've had parents ask, "Hey, have you noticed X, Y, and Z about our kid? Have they said anything?" And I've said, "No, I haven't really noticed in the facility, but if you guys are okay with it, I'm happy to take them out to dinner, and we can talk more, and I can kind of figure some stuff out." Um, for some of our college athletes, have taken them out to dinner, kind of in terms of when we've wrapped up our program, and then they're kind of going back to school. But there certainly is that aspect where there is a line, and there's some things that you shouldn't be talking about, and kind of to your point, like if we hear about these things, we should say something about these things.
Yes.
But I do feel like, at least in my side, I might have to be a touch more friendly. The kids that are coming to us, they don't have to come to us. They're not mandated by a sport coach. And the challenge that we're up against is if a parent has to drag their kid to our facility to come and train, parents just going to stop it. And they're like, we're not going to put up with this. We're not going to deal with this. And so, it's kind of the onus is on us to create this environment that kids like coming to. They feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of it. So I think for us, we kind of need to lean into the friendship side a little bit more. Not to say that every time we come in here, it's one big party. We're having this great old time. Still work, we still get after it, but from our side, it probably is a little more friendliness that has to be involved.
100%. I lean a lot more into the team aspect of it, where like all of my athletes know that I'm there for them. Going to those team events, making sure it's always in a group setting, stuff like that. So they know that I am still there for them 100% of the time. But like you said, it's not as one-on-one as a private sector is, because they are required to come to my trainings. They are required to do all the things. Whereas, like you said, private sector, don't envy you at all. Trying to maintain a client base would definitely be not my strong suit. At least I definitely could give as much as I could to the athletes, but that's another side of it.
I get it. How about, since you've had a host of experience across different teams, different levels within the collegiate sector, you've had some experience and time in the private sector, but how do you go about earning an athlete's trust? And kind of secondarily to that, how do you know when you've earned it and like have it?
Starts first. Easiest thing is learn their name. Like I had a women's soccer guy here, and we had 10 new people basically. So immediately within the first couple of days, learn their names, learn what gets the most out of them, what motivates them. I have individual player meetings with every single one of my players, whether it's returner or newcomer. That way they know that I'm trying to learn about them, learning their name, making sure I know what all their goals are, especially in the weight room. Then that way I can kind of fix, okay, here's what they actually want to see. And then I kind of use my testing battery to show them some buy-in as well. So all the things that I test, I give them access to where they can see themselves improving. Obviously, we just started, so I haven't been able to get too many results yet, but getting player buy-in that way to where they know they're not just another face in the weight room for me. They're a human that I truly care for and want to see the best out of them. And then it's obviously giving them the results from my programming to where they see themselves getting better. And it's not just, okay, we're going to go pick up a 5-pound dumbbell and then walk out of the weight room. We're going to actually get to work. And this stuff is actually going to help me become a better athlete, not just trying to feel good in here.
100%. And how have you kind of determined, like, what's that trigger for you when you think to yourself, oh, they're bought in, they like me, they trust me?
It's different for every athlete. Some of them will be a lot more personable. A lot of them will start to joke a little bit more. They'll just open up a lot more, show their personality. But then I'll also see their effort increase in the weight room. So I think I've told you this story before, but when I first got here, our women's soccer team was putting 5-pound plates on their back squats. So 55 pounds total. And like you could see it was easy, like, but they didn't know any better or want to give any more effort. And so now that I've gotten some buy-in from them, they trust me enough to, even though it's in season, put some weight on the bar and try and move it to the best of their ability. And so I see it that way, just the amount of effort they're giving me and how they respond to things that I do. Like I've added some additional stuff, whether it's recovery session or some mobility, or again, just the strength training in general, or any of the power jump stuff that we might do. And I know in the past it would have been a lot of complaining, whereas now it's, okay, I trust my coach here and he thinks this is what's best for us to do right now. So we're going to do it to the best of our ability. Instead of just going through the motions and going through some light stretches or whatever it might be at the end of practice. So I'd say just knowing that they're bought in would be, they trust what you're doing with them. And then how much effort are they actually giving you out of that?
100%. I like that a lot. It just kind of made me think, are you doing anything from a workout perspective around maybe like team buy-in? I know just kind of across the collegiate sector, there's a lot of competitions that coaches are implementing, whether that's within workout groups or across the team in general. Have you tried any of those things to kind of get more of that buy-in from your athletes?
Yeah, when I can, I try to gamify some of my stuff, get a little bit more competition out of them, and they seem to enjoy it, especially off season more so. Just because I only get so much time with them. So in season, like I need to get them in and out. I don't want to add any unnecessary fatigue. And you can do competitions that aren't fatigue inducing, but I will definitely add some things that make the weight room a little bit more fun, especially certain times of the year. But in season, if I only get them like twice a week, some of that competition stuff just goes to practice. And I might join in with them actually. Like I'm not very good at it, but I'll join in like passing circles or juggling circles with them, to where they can see that I'm even buying into what they're doing and trying to be around them as much as possible. But competition wise, I've done some max grip, like for men's lacrosse, holding onto the barbell, like separate them into classes and then see who can hold it the longest. I've done push-up competitions, dead hang competitions, all sorts of things that get them competing, and then whichever group loses has some sort of punishment. And especially the guys that win, you can see they're pretty bought into it. They enjoy it a lot.
And that could just kind of make me think too. I know we've talked a lot in the past, but I know in you constructing your off-season program for your teams, and I think soccer specifically, you had a, I guess, goal to have, what was it, 50% completion or 50% buy-in from your athletes completing it. And if they achieve that, you were going to do their conditioning test with them. Maybe do you want to talk through kind of your philosophy there, kind of how it went, what you saw, and knowing that you did the test, how it went?
Yeah, that was not fun, but yeah, over the summer, I unfortunately don't get any of my teams. It is 100% optional work for all of them per NCAA rules. So I give them the summer packet. I can see who completes it, but I can't do anything with those numbers. I can't report it to coaches or anything like that. So I just give them a little bit of an extra challenge or incentive to try to complete it. And so for women's soccer this year, I said I'd run the yo-yo if they got to a certain percentage of their team builder, and they actually hit it by 2%. So we had a kid who had a hip injection, and so she was going to run it by herself. And since they hit it and I was going to run it anyways, I ran it with her. And let me tell you, I train almost entirely anaerobic, power output and strength. And so running the yo-yo, I started breathing heavy by like round 12, and I somehow made it to 32. So I passed their test. I told them that was my goal, is I would pass. And eventually you zone out, but when I first started, you could see the entire team there cheering us both on, and it was awesome too. They seemed to really appreciate it. And some of them, we still talk about it, saying, "Hey, are you sore?" Stuff like this and that. And so it was definitely cool. So that's another way you can get some buy-in. Of course, I'm young. I'm only 24. So say once I get to 40 or 50, probably not going to be doing that. But while I'm still young and training, it was a cool challenge for myself. One, I was telling them it's like a police officer getting tased for the first time before they go into duty, like half a initiation almost to coach soccer. So was pretty happy with how that went.
Just getting a taste of your own medicine.
Exactly.
I would say kind of from my perspective in terms of earning athletes' trust and buy-in, I certainly think it starts with just that relationship. I think your point on learning their name, I read this somewhere, heard this somewhere, that the most well-liked word in the universe or in anyone's language is their name. So the more that we can use their name, the better that they're going to feel about themselves. And I think, for us, and my philosophy has been, every coach that these athletes experience is probably going to be more geared towards being negative. Hey, you didn't do this right. Hey, we need to see this improvement. And I think athletes kind of get caught up in that a little too much. And so it's trying to take that perspective of how can we be more positive. no question, we're going to be cueing technique, trying to see improvements in technique. And so there is like, okay, you need to do this better, but how can we frame that in a positive way, in a positive light? How can we use, our vocabulary, our language to be more positive while still getting that same point across? And I've seen it go pretty far with our athletes where they take to our coaching. It's in terms of maybe we'll lead with what they did super well and then say, hey, if you want to be faster, let's try X, Y, and Z. Let's try driving EI or a little bit more on the sprint. And so I think for us, we've seen some really good buy-in from our athletes just by trying to maintain a positive environment, still coaching them really hard and having some high expectations, but doing so in a very positive way.
100%. I think we are their biggest cheerleader on the coaching staff. I know I was talking with my sports coach, but they hear just so much. I don't want to say negativity because their sports coaches obviously love them too and want to see what's best out of them. But a lot of time in practice, it's, hey, what can we do better? Whereas when I get my athletes or I'm on the sideline with my athletes, it's always high fives. It's always good job. It's always like, you're looking really good right here. To the same point you said, though, it's making sure they do have the right form, whatever we're asking them to do. But it's always trying to start with something positive, like you said, and then go to what can we correct. And then just be a positive light for them. I've seen his work tremendously, especially with my female athletes. Like, they are almost sometimes shocked that they have someone in their corner, always trying to support them to the best of their ability.
Yeah, I found that to be super interesting. And, I think in our community, we have some awesome parents. I interact with our parents on a very frequent basis in terms of conversation, and the level of support that our athletes get, I think, is second to none. However, I do see a disconnect in how some of these athletes feel and how they show up to where, for us, and we're this positive influence, this positive light in their lives, and we just see like complete transformations. And I don't know where that disconnect could be, or kind of what the main reasoning is, but I've certainly seen that too, where, we just give them a little positivity, a little encouragement, just, even just saying, hey, we're in your corner, however we can help, however we can support, however we can show up for you. I've seen it go super far, and I think that's really helped with our athlete buy-in.
I think that's really well said.
How about this one? Can a coach care too much about being liked by their athletes?
I mean, yes. Like I said earlier, like we are first and foremost their coach, not their friend. And I've definitely, in the collegiate, it is mandatory that they are here. Whereas in private sector, a lot of the time, like, they choose to want to be there. Sometimes their parents might force them to be there, but a lot of times they want to be there and get better. And so I've had to fight the battle before of like, okay, this athlete just does not care. I don't know if they'll even be here next year, honestly. So how much attention do I give this athlete compared to the athlete that is 100% bought into what I'm doing? Like, I still am going to be there for them and support them, and will do anything they ask of me. Like, if they need extra support, I'll still help them. But at the same time, like, if they don't like everything that I do, that's okay. I'm still going to be there for the rest of the team and make sure that they're all on the same standard of, we're going to finish this lift. And that might be having a conversation with the captain of talking to this player one-on-one to make sure he's doing what he's doing. But for the most part, I want my athletes to enjoy what I do, but
Yeah.
It's not the most important thing in the world if they're still getting better. Like, I understand I think at LMU we have 400 something student athletes. I know not every single one of them is going to like my personality that I coach, and that's okay.
100%. Yeah, I think especially this is probably more related to younger coaches, kind of more of those GAs or people just first starting into the field where, maybe just an experience, and you want your athletes to like you. You want your athletes to enjoy being around. And so I certainly think there are coaches out there, and, I've certainly seen some on social media, just some that I've interacted with myself, where I think they lean a little too much into being too friendly, being too much of, hey, let's, we're bros, like, we can just bro down, hang out. And I think that's probably indexing a little too much over, I think it kind of relates back to just being genuine. If you genuinely care about your athletes and you're genuine and authentic towards them, I don't think you have to be anyone you're not to get that buy-in. It's if you're yourself, you show up for them, you support them when they need it. I think the buy-in kind of takes care of itself after that. But if you're trying too hard, doing all these different things, posting on social media, the conversations you're having, in the facility, sometimes I think, sometimes people just take it too far with it.
Yeah. I think that genuine portion, like student athletes aren't dumb. They know when you're trying to be something you're not. And so always be yourself in the way that you like to coach. Like I'm never going to try, I can be a raw guy, but a lot of the time it's more of a silent, like, good job. Most of the time it's not always yelling in their face and getting them amped up. But I think that's why I work pretty well with the sports that I have instead of like you think old school football, strength and conditioning. I'm not a huge yeller like that, but I think for the most time, if you're genuine with them, they'll appreciate it more than if you're trying to fake it just to get more buy-in, quote unquote.
100%. And I've seen it in our athletes here where I have a nickname among some of them as Mr. Serious Pants. I want I want our athletes to work hard. I want them to see the results. I want them to experience and achieve these goals that they have set out for them. And so to me, that's no small undertaking. In being an athlete myself, I know what it takes to get to these levels that they're trying to achieve. And it's like, hey, we gotta stay focused. We got to work. But in hearing that nickname thrown around, I've noticed where, okay, I think for one person, I can dial things up. For another person, I can dial things down. So maybe at a time, I'm raising my voice to the group, getting everything organized. And then, to this person, I'm just bringing it down, having a conversation, and I think it's dials. It's not switches where something's on, something's off. You can dial things up, you can dial things down. And to your point, I think the athletes appreciate that, where someone's not going to like the rah-rah type, others, they want it. But if you can be one, if you can be that to one person, but then, dial stuff down and just kind of have a regular conversation with another, I think they see that, they recognize that, they see that, hey, he's trying to meet me where I'm at. And he knows that I don't like that type of coaching. And so he's meeting me where I'm at. I think that goes super far with these relationships.
Yeah, I think every athlete has a different way they enjoy being coached. And like you said, I like the dial analogy. I think that's exactly how we should coach. And obviously getting a new group of freshmen or transfers or whatever it might be, it takes just a second or a couple of weeks to figure out which exactly type of coaching they need. But I usually err on the side of caution and start a little lighter, and then I can dial it up if I need to, because I know some of my we have a girl who's probably going to go play professional here, professional soccer, and I always give her just a little bit more energy compared to some of my freshmen who might just be wide-eyed scared of everything right now. So I'll definitely go and say good job to them or coach them up on what they need, but it's not going to be in their face getting them going. So just meeting them, like you said, meet them where they're at, and then as you get to know them a lot more, that's why I'm excited to be here for a couple of years so that I can actually get a group and develop them and learn who they are as individuals, so I can be the best coach for them as I can.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great. And I guess maybe kind of along the same lines that we were just kind of talking about there, but can you coach every athlete the same way, or do you feel like standards stay the same while your approach changes?
Standards have to stay the same. If you have a standard and you let some of them slip, it's not a true standard. And so while you might, again, I go back to our men's lacrosse team has 60 kids on it. So some kids are going to be more bought into the weight room than others. Last semester, I had to rip into them because some of the kids who weren't as bought in weren't holding to the standard. And so in that case, it was coaching the entire group to why this is important and making sure that they are holding each other accountable, but then also like knowing that I'm serious about what we're talking about. So yes, coaching athletes differently, but then making sure that they all know what I say goes, and I am their coach to where the standard that I set, I'm not going to let slip just because you might not feel like it that day. But overall, yeah, athletes need to be coached a little bit different depending on their personality, but not going to let someone slip just because they might be doing something or might not enjoy one part of the process, if that makes sense.
100%. Oh, I get that too. And, I think we've tried to do a really good job at having really high standards for our athletes in terms of what we want to see out of them, their level of focus, their level of intent, the work that they're putting in, the form that they're using. And, I think just with our demographic where we do have a lot of middle schoolers in training with us, these kids want to push weight and they want to be these strong kids. And I'm all for it, but it has to be within our standard. It has to be with good form, good technique. And I've really had to change how I coach that, because I think for me as an athlete, if a coach told me something, I just did it and trusted it and just went with it. And I think in trying to, and just replicating that, on these athletes, I recognized where, they didn't like that and they kind of shut down after it. They kind of feel like they were a weak athlete or not as good of an athlete. And so I've really had to reframe a lot of conversations and highlight different points so that I can still get my point across, highlight where I see them still being a good athlete and why we're doing what we're doing. And kind of through that process, they've been a lot more understanding of it, and, have made for easier coaching corrections after the fact. But I totally agree. Like, there has to be a standard in the weight room, and it has to be held for everyone. I think sometimes it is easy to coach really hard the kids that want to be here, and you kind of see that really big buy-in from, or they have these big goals and dreams and aspirations. Other kids, they're just trying to get their feet wet and they're just figuring it out. But the athletes pick up on when standards change, and they pick up on it very quick. And so being able to hold the line for everyone, beating those athletes where they're at, having the right conversations, pointing to the right things, it all matters and they all go super far.
I think a huge portion of that too is educating them on why you even have the standards. I'm a huge advocate for explaining why is behind things. Like, if I can't explain why an exercise is in my program, it probably shouldn't be in my program. And same thing with standards. If I don't have a reason for why we're doing something a certain way, like you said, if someone's form is off, like, I'm going to tell them to go down. Or if I can see that they can do more, I'm going to tell them to go up. Which is always funny because I have my lacrosse team, it's always telling them to go down. And then my soccer team or softball team is always telling them to go up. But no, if you educate them on why, and that's why I love bringing them up at the end of a training session to go over some highlights or notes that I might mentally had, and just let them know why we're doing what we do. Or even if it's, I had a meeting with my soccer team before we started preseason this year, of why I have what standards I have. That education piece gives them, okay, he's not just telling me to do this just to do this. Like, we're all wearing the same uniform or same outfit because that's a small thing that I'm waking up and consciously deciding to do. It's not just because he wants us all to look a certain way. Like, everything that you put in your program or into your weight room needs to have a reason so that athletes can understand why they're being asked to do what they're doing.
I think that's really cool that you do that kind of team meeting, quote unquote, before maybe getting into a program in season, out of season. I think that's an awesome idea, and just, it sets the standard, it sets the expectation, and it just gives you the opportunity to explain your why. I think in my side, that would be awesome to have something like that, but just given how we roll kids into the program, kids are busy, parents are busy, a lot harder. You can't really mandate them to come and sit through this. So I'm a little jealous of that. That's awesome. How do you handle an athlete who isn't giving you the effort or the buy-in that you expect?
Again, I'm very blessed. Our athletic program here is very, very good, and we recruit kids who almost always want to be here. But sometimes there are roster minimums that they have to hit. And so a kid might be more of a risk, quote unquote, and more of that walk-on type. Like, we're going to invest him in early and see how he does, to where he might get to where we need him to be. But some of those kids at the same time, again, they are technically a risk for the team just based on culture. So if I see a kid who doesn't have as much buy-in as he should, whether it's like, hey, you're here on third string. If you ever want to be first string, this is a process we have to take to get there. If they're not as bought into it as they need to be, it's always starting with a conversation first. If they're not holding the standard, then I'm going to point them out and get them corrected in the session. But if I can tell they're just not giving the effort that they need to actually get better, because it's not just about getting into the door. Like, yes, getting to the weight room is half the battle, making sure you're up at 5 a.m. to get to the 6 a.m. lift. But now you're here, we actually need the intent behind it. It's not just going through the motions. You're never going to get better that way. So again, explaining why we're doing what we're doing, why the weight room is important, how it makes you a better athlete has worked for me in the past. If they continue to not care, if they continue to not put in as much effort, if they're still doing the things I'm asking them to do, like they're picking up their weights, they're resetting their rack at the end of the session, if they're hitting all their sets and reps at least, because I have had kids who have tried to cut sets and reps, and that's a whole nother conversation. But if they're not bought in and doing the intensity that I need them to do, sometimes you just have to move along to the kids who are giving you everything. I can't give all my focus to this kid who doesn't care enough to try and make himself better when I have 50 other kids who are trying to make themselves better. So it's never really giving up on them, but at the same time, knowing that like if he's only a sophomore, he's going to have more years. I wish I could have gotten that time back with him. And maybe one day he's going to regret not putting in as much effort as he did. But at the same time, like, I have a senior over here who's busting his ass. I'm going to make sure I give him all the effort that he deserves and make sure that he's getting coached right to where he's ready for the season or whatever part of the season we're in, getting him ready for his next game.
100%. Have you, whether it was you in your own career as an athlete or then now as a coach, have you ever tasked maybe a leader of the team or one of those guys that or girls that really buys in, has a ton of effort, has a ton of work ethic? Have you ever tasked them with trying to pull some of these kids up with them?
100%. I was very blessed when I was a player to be a captain, and so we didn't have a strength coach. We had sports coaches running a program that our head coach got. And so when I played, me and the other captains had to kind of police it to where it's like, hey, if a guy is not doing what he needs to do, we're helping drag him along. And again, I didn't know as much then as I do now, obviously, but still knowing it's important, I had to bring them along with me. And so knowing that I was able to do it, I put a lot of emphasis on our captains to be able to help with that. I try to put them in as much leadership roles as possible to where it's not always coaches telling players what to do. But if you truly want to win a championship, it needs to be student athlete led. Like, a coach cannot care more than the student athletes do about winning. Like, it's just never going to work out that way. And so if I can get them more opportunities to get vocal in front of their team or lead them along, that usually works out better for everyone's interest, to where they get more reps at communication. But then also, if a student athlete sees that their other teammates are bought into this and are pushing themselves, usually it'll help drag them along compared to if a coach is always just telling them to improve. That usually works a lot better in most case scenarios.
When I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but you kind of do, I know like you have your team sound off at racks for sets and all that kind of stuff. Do you assign rack leaders for each rack?
I usually let them pick where they want to go, and they are usually really good at organizing themselves. Like, I didn't have to assign racks for soccer this year. One of our captains was like, freshman, make sure you get in a rack with a returner, stuff like that. So again, that's awesome. She's already leading, doing exactly what I need her to do. I'll only move people around if it's just one rack is lagging behind or is doing something completely wrong. But for the most part, they self-organize pretty well to where I don't have to worry too much about that. And then, like you said, the sounding off thing is just another opportunity for one of my captains at least to be vocal in front of everyone to where I'm not in charge of everything.
100%. I think that makes sense. I think on our side in the private sector, with coaching buy-in and kind of trying to handle those athletes that maybe aren't giving everything they got, whenever someone comes into our program, they always are looking to fill some sort of need. Maybe it's to get faster, to get stronger, to be more explosive. The parent or themselves see some sort of deficiency in their game on the field, on the court, and so they're coming to us with a reason. And so I try to be very just upfront and have a good conversation ahead of them starting. Why do you really want to be here? What's your goal with this? What does success look like for you 6 months from now, 12 months from now? And then I do like asking, do you have any bigger aspirations as it relates to sports? And so then, that kind of gives me the ammunition then when I do see these athletes slacking off, maybe not being as focused, maybe not giving 100% effort or effort that we've seen on previous sessions, it can lead to a conversation of, hey, you told me you wanted to go play at the University of Tennessee and play baseball. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think someone that's there right now is giving the same sort of effort that you're giving? And I just try to hold that mirror back up to them and let them answer for themselves. I don't try to inject any sort of opinion in the matter. It's just, what do you think? And I think a lot of times it just kind of is that realization of like, oh, I need to be better here, or hey, I'm not seeing this, X, Y, and Z thing come about. And I've seen some pretty good success where we've been able to, maybe we started off slow in a session, had a conversation about it, and then these athletes have finished a lot stronger. And I think with it, these athletes are still learning. And I would imagine it's probably the same still for you, just as much as our middle school and high school kids, where they're still learning this process. They're still learning these different aspects of sports, of how to be a competitor, of how to work hard. And so the much as we can teach them and coach them through that versus just saying, hey, I need to see this better, but coach them, teach them on the why, on the how. I think it just makes them a much better athlete all around.
100%. I love the holding up a mirror because, again, I ask them what their goals are. Some might say win conference. Some might say to their first pull-up, whatever it might be. But then are their goals, are their actions actually in line with their goals? And if you can hold that mirror up and be like, hey, here's what you're doing right now. Here's what you actually need to be doing in order to get to the goal that you set, I think is a very powerful tool to get them just a little bit more motivated.
100%. And because you've said it before, and I think it's certainly true, like these kids aren't dumb. They are athletes, so they are competitive. Like I said, they do have these goals, dreams, and aspirations, and I think they just need to be reminded more than anything, reminded of those goals, reminded of where they want to go, reminded of what it takes. And just in those simple reminders done consistently over time, we've seen it where we've had some good success. And I think they just need to be reminded. They just need to be refocused. Don't necessarily need to be taught anything new. So we can remind them on the process, on those goals. It just makes it better for them in the long haul.
100%.
What does coachable actually mean to you? And can you teach an athlete to become more coachable?
Asking tough questions right now. I would say coachable is, can you listen, and then can you actually apply what you're being told? Some athletes will hear something, it'll go in one ear, out the other. They don't actually adjust based on what their coach is telling them to do. And so being coachable to me is, one, not be getting defensive or whatever it might have been. Like, if I told you did something wrong, it's not like, well, this is why. And like, no, like, I'm telling you this for a reason. One, it's either for your safety or you can get a better outcome if you do it the way that I'm telling you to do it. So it's not getting defensive. And then it's seeing, is there an effort to actually try and change whatever movement pattern we're trying to get them to change, or attitude we're trying to get them to change. I've had athletes in the past that would be like, yes, sir, and then not change a thing. So they might receive the message, but then they're not actually trying to put that into action to correct whatever mistake it might have been, whether it's, hey, get lower on this next set. Yes, sir. All right. You didn't even move an inch slower. But I would say that's my biggest definition of coachable. And then athletes can get better at it, especially in my setting. I would say they get used to being in a team setting. They get used to all the demands that they're being asked of them, especially if a freshman comes in. I would say transfers are a little harder because they've had other coaching standards in the past, and they might have done things a different way. And heck, I might only get them for one semester. So it's hard to change habits that are ingrained in them that fast. But that's why I also enjoy having freshmen, because I can instill the habits and the standards that I want, and then get them to that point of being more coachable to where they're listening to the things I'm asking them to do.
That's awesome. I think your definition of being coachable, I would agree with it 100%. And I certainly agree. I think you can teach athletes to become more coachable. And I think it relates back to the relationship that you have, how you go about doing it. You know, I think that the mirror example is a great opportunity for that. And just connecting it back to the why. And I think I find myself reminding our athletes a lot of why we're here. And I know you've said it already, but we want to see you successful in your sport. You know, success to us is you being successful on the field, on the court, achieving your goals, winning championships, winning games. And so just remind them of that of, okay, we're here for you and we're here to support you. And I think just over time, you know, you can kind of chip away at maybe some of those walls or any sort of things that they might be holding against us for whatever reason it might be. And just over time, we kind of get that coachability out of them. But yeah, I certainly think it's coachable, and it just takes time. You know, everything in our field, it takes time, more time than we probably would like it to, or the athletes would like it to. But we play the long game and let time do its thing. Kind of everything works the way that we hope it all works out to be.
Yeah. And this could open a whole another can of worms, but I always make sure my athletes know that I don't care how much they squat. I tell every recruit that comes into the weight room, like, I'm not here to make you a good power lifter. I'm here to make you better at whatever sport you're trying to play. And I think that also helps with the coaching side of it and their want to listen to you, because they know traditionally yes, I want you to get stronger, but that's not my overall goal. I want you to become a better soccer player, softball player, lacrosse player. So getting that also helps with the coachability portion of it, to where they're actually listening to what you're saying.
100%. Yeah, I certainly have those conversations with kids in our program all the time, especially the ones that, you know, we're trying to limit the load that they might want to do, and just remind them of, like, you're an athlete, and to be an athlete, you need to be fast, you need to be explosive, you need to be strong, you need all these qualities. These other things, you know, if you're just trying to get big, okay, then we're just bodybuilding. If you're just trying to get strong, then you're just a power lifter. And, like, you know, you play soccer, you play football, like, there's a task that you're going out and trying to achieve. And if we can make you faster, more explosive and stronger, like, you can be better at that task. And so all the time we're just bringing it back to that. And I think that's a great point. And I think it's also worth noting too that, like, that is our ultimate goal, whether it is, like, to the sport coach or maybe for us to a parent, of, like, we want them to be high performers and high achieving athletes. Like, I tell our athletes all the time, I want you to be the best athlete on your team. I want you guys to be competing on the best teams and going out and achieving your goals and dreams. So we're here to support you through that. And, like, trust us that the reason we're doing these different exercises at these different times with sets and reps, there's all reason that's accumulating to you being the best you in your respective sport. And so I think that point definitely gets lost with sport coaches, with parents, when we say, hey, we want them here twice a week. We want them here twice a week in season. Like, not because we're trying to fluff our own ego and, like, you know, spend time. We're doing it for them. And we're doing it because we know it's going to increase their performance, maintain their performance, and help with them achieving their sport.
100%. I wish that was as easy of a conversation as it sounds.
Yes, 100%. I guess maybe just one more question here, and then we can wrap up. I think this is probably a really good one to end on. But if athletes forget every workout that you ever wrote for them, what do you hope that they remember about being coached by you?
I mean, honestly, that they were loved. Like, I hope every athlete that I come in contact with and I get the opportunity to coach knows that I would do anything for them, and that I was always there to support them no matter what. Like I said, I'm going to be their biggest cheerleader. I'm going to be on the sideline cheering every single one of them on. And so if they don't take anything health and wellness related away, like I hope they know they always have a number they can call no matter how rough life might get. Like I know it's impossible to keep in contact with every single athlete that I might come in contact with, but I hope they know they always have someone in their corner.
I think that's awesome. I think I'm certainly of the same mindset where I hope that they just feel my presence with them, like just that they're cared for, they're supported, they're heard. I would much rather have an athlete be talking to me than me trying to, spew whatever is on my mind to them.
Yes.
Just that, hey, Craig, he showed up for me. He cared about my development. He supported me in the hard times. He was there for the good times and we were able to celebrate it. But just as much as he was giving me high fives and we were celebrating stuff, he put his arm around my shoulder and we walked side by side through whatever negative situation that we might be going through. So I think just that level of care and just support and presence for them, is what I hope these athletes kind of take away from.
100%.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Number 2 for us, and I think this was a great topic and both ones that we think a lot about. So I appreciate you rocking with it and appreciate your time today.
Oh, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Let's end this recording.